My name is Jonathan Katz. I'm a senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Here as part of an observer delegation from NDI. And I'm here with Matthew. And maybe you just want to announce yourself too.
Sure, my name is Matthew Schaaf. I'm the director of the Freedom House office in Ukraine, and I'm happy to be here.
And I think what we're just going to talk about today, and Matthew and myself are both have long been engaged and involved, Matthew leading Freedom House's efforts here in Ukraine, really to talk a little bit more about the substance of the conversation, issues that have been impacting civil society, Ukraine's democracy and transition. And they all matter greatly. Obviously, results are still flowing in from the election. So don't want to comment on any of those results yet until there's a number of observer delegations that are going to be coming in. I know the Canadians will be here, but also we have the OSCE, NDI, IRI, and others. So I'm going to hold my powder on those results, but maybe ask Matt a little bit more about the key issues of concern to Ukrainians, both in this election, but really in general, that are playing out, that they'd like to see addressed. And you can see it manifest itself in some of the voting and some of the frustration. So Freedom House does an amazing job at supporting and engaging with civil society. And I always, as someone who's worked with USAID, overseeing work with civil society, but also with different sectors of Ukraine, I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of people here, and I get a sense of a frustration about progress. But maybe you could speak to some of what you would see as the key reforms and observations you have about where civil society would like, and Ukrainian citizens, for that matter, would like to see Ukraine go, not just with this election in terms of potentially a new president, new administration, but also with parliamentary elections coming up in the fall.
Sure. I think it's probably not a surprise for anyone that the issue of corruption is first and foremost one of the key motivating factors for people to vote and to register their concern about corruption. But also, of course, it affects many aspects of daily life in Ukraine. Certainly on the daily basis of encountering and having to deal with corruption. But then also, of course, on the much higher level, as we found out just before the election, the corruption scandals continue to emerge across the economy, across the government. And so that was very clearly one of the main concerns that Ukrainian voters had in our expressing through this election. I would note that the Constitutional Court of Ukraine is considering on April 4th a measure that was signed by President Poroshenko to require that anti-corruption activists prepare financial asset declarations, the same declarations that are required of government officials. And this was one of the sort of seesawing anti-corruption measures that we've seen over the past few years. Certainly the introduction of some important anti-corruption institutions, but then at the same time efforts to actually to get them to decrease their effectiveness. And we're seeing this actually with civil society organizations and activists that are working on corruption, or fighting corruption rather. And so this is a sign. The election overall is a sign of the protest against some of these measures, and recent results of opinion polling showing high levels of distrust of Ukrainian government officials clearly indicates that there is not enough trust there that the public officials are acting in the public interest and on behalf of the citizens of Ukraine. And so whoever ends up being the president, it seems like there will be a second round, needs to work really hard to re-earn that trust, certainly when it comes to the fight against corruption, but also in many other sectors.
Thank you. And, I think you pointed out what has been obviously, as someone who's been observing this election process, and in Washington, I'm very much involved with a number of organizations, both in Washington, Brussels, and Kiev, that are really looking closely at this issue of strengthening civil society, addressing the key reform issues which you outline, including corruption and, of course, the scandals, some of them that occurred before the election, really sort of a reminder of all the work that needs to be done. And, of course, Ukraine has taken steps forward, but is also in need of taking some additional steps. And when you're thinking about these candidates and thinking about their what they should be focused on in terms of enhancing citizen participation, are there things that could be done? Are there things that should be done beyond Kiev that really will matter to strengthening democracy and governance, transparency, and the judiciary that will, 5 years after the Maidan, will actually really help Ukraine accelerate its Euro-Atlantic track, but really progress that the public is looking for. And I'd really love to have your comments since you're looking so closely at this.
Sure. I would focus on local level democracy. Certainly, we've been talking about national level democracy in institutions, but with decentralization happening, with communities at the local level having budget authority, this is an amazing opportunity for people to be making decisions at the local level about how resources will be spent. Of course, there are many government officials who are not used to engaging with citizens, to having them come to meet them, to holding public hearings, and so there will be a lot of work necessary to teach public officials about both the importance of this type of engagement, but ways that they can do that beyond just participatory budgeting, which has grown very popular, but a more regular, sustained, and deep engagement between officials and citizens. Of course, this also creates new opportunities for corruption at the local level when decisions about how town, village funds are being spent are being made at the local level. And so that means that the government and civil society need to also be focusing on corruption at the local level to be ensuring that that these funds are used in the best interest of the people living there.
Well, I know, first of all, thank you to the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. I think the conversation about reforms, I know we could be spending both reforms, but what comes next in terms of Ukraine's efforts to strengthen its democracy and transparency. We could spend a lot more time talking about this. I want to thank the Ukraine Crisis Media Center for the opportunity to be here, and all of you for joining us. I know this is going to be a long day observing both what happens in the election, but hearing from a lot of international and other partners of Ukraine, also civil society as well. And I think I would just want to add, too, that I think regardless, and as someone who is based in Washington and comes from the U.S. government previously, how important it will be, and I think you'll see many of them coming through here today, that the international partners of Ukraine, regardless of who wins this election, continue to support Ukraine moving forward with support for resources and assistance for democracy and governance reforms to strengthen civil society. And I think that as we look to the coming days, and of course you'll have parliamentary elections, which will bring in potentially new leadership, that type of support is really critical to Ukrainians who want to see their country move forward. So this partnership will continue. Matt, thank you so much for being here on an incredibly busy day for you and for your colleagues here on the ground, but also Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Thank you for the opportunity to brief and to also talk about the substance behind why people are voting the way that they're voting and the priorities for this country moving forward. And we look forward to speaking to you again at some other point. Thank you.